I never imagined that one day my past would knock on my door again, demanding something as precious as blood. It all began on a rainy evening, the kind that always made me uneasy. I was in the hospital, clutching my 7-year-old son's hand, praying he'd wake up. His little face was pale, his breathing weak, and every beep of the machine beside him pierced my soul. The doctor's words still echoed in my head. He needs an urgent blood transfusion, but his type is extremely rare. I remember whispering, "Do whatever it takes, please. Just save him." But they couldn't find a match in the database. I felt helpless, my knees giving way as I sank onto the cold hospital floor. My mother tried to comfort me, but there was nothing she could say. My son, my little Liam, was slipping away, and then the doctor looked at me with hesitation in his eyes. "There's one possible match," he said. My heart pounded. "Who?" I asked. His pause told me everything. His father. My breath caught in my throat. I hadn't seen or heard from him in 8 years. The man who abandoned me when I was pregnant. The man who shattered my trust and disappeared like I never existed. I thought I'd buried that part of my life forever. But now destiny had other plans. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "There must be someone else." The doctor sighed. "If we don't contact him, your son might not make it through the night." That sentence hit me harder than anything ever had. My pride, my pain, none of it mattered anymore. I nodded slowly, tears streaming down my face. "Find him," I said. "Do whatever you need to do." As I waited in the sterile white corridor, my heart wrestled between hatred and desperation. Memories of his betrayal came rushing back the way he left when I needed him most. The lies he told, the promises he broke. I had built a new life without him. But now, fate was dragging him back into mine. I didn't know how I'd face him again, or what I'd say. But one thing was clear. My son's life depended on the man who once destroyed mine. Hours passed like years as I sat by Liam's bedside, staring at the door every time footsteps echoed in the hall. The doctor had called him, but there was no guarantee he'd come. After all, he'd walked away from us once without looking back. The thought of seeing him again made my stomach twist. I still remembered that day 8 years ago when I told him I was pregnant. His face turned cold. His words cut through me like a knife. "I'm not ready for this, Mia. You trapped me," he said, his voice filled with disgust. I begged him to stay, told him I didn't want his money, just his presence. But he walked away, leaving me standing in the rain, clutching the pregnancy test in my trembling hand. I had cried until my tears ran dry that night, and I swore I'd never depend on him again. Now here I was, praying he'd walk through that same door I once watched him leave through. The irony was cruel. Just when I thought hope was slipping away, the door creaked open. I turned and my heart froze. He stood there taller, sharper, more distant than I remembered. His dark suit was immaculate, his expression unreadable. But his eyes, there was something in them, a flicker of guilt or maybe shock when they landed on Liam. "He's mine?" he asked quietly. I nodded, unable to speak. The doctor stepped in to explain the situation, his tone urgent. Without a word, he agreed to the test. As they took him away to draw his blood, I sat in silence, my mind spinning. Part of me wanted to scream at him, ask why he left, why he never came looking for us. But another part of me knew I couldn't afford anger right now, not when my son's life hung by a thread. When he returned, he didn't look at me. He stood by the window, hands in his pockets, avoiding my eyes. "I'll do it," he finally said, his voice low. "If my blood can save him, I'll do whatever it takes." For a moment, I almost believed there was sincerity in his voice. But then he added softly, "After this, we're even." Those words shattered the fragile hope that had begun to form inside me. The hours that followed felt endless. I watched from behind the glass as they prepped him for the transfusion. The sterile smell of disinfectant hung in the air, mixing with my fear. Liam lay unconscious, tiny tubes running from his arms, while the man who once called himself his father sat beside him, letting his blood flow into our son's fragile body. My heart was torn between gratitude and bitterness. I should have been thankful. But the sight of him there brought back every sleepless night, every tear I shed alone when he never answered my calls. The nurses whispered quietly around me, unaware of the storm raging inside my chest. When the doctor finally stepped out, his tired smile brought me to tears. "It worked," he said softly. "Your son is responding well. He's strong." My knees gave out, and I covered my mouth to muffle my sobs. Relief, raw and overwhelming, poured through me. I didn't even realize he was standing behind the doctor until I heard his voice. "He's going to be okay?" he asked, his tone softer now. I turned to him, and for the first time in years, I truly looked at him. The same sharp jawline, the same deep brown eyes, but something had changed. There was weariness there, maybe even regret. "Yes," I whispered. "He's going to make it." For a moment, we stood in silence. Two broken people bound by a child neither of us planned but both needed. He cleared his throat and said quietly, "You've done well, Mia. Raising him alone. I didn't think you could." His words stung more than he realized. "You didn't think I could?" I snapped, my voice trembling. "You didn't even stay to find out." He looked away, guilt flashing across his face. "I was young and stupid," he muttered. "I thought I was doing the right thing walking away before I ruined your life." I almost laughed at that, bitter and tired. "You didn't just walk away from me," I said. "You walked away from him." He didn't respond. Instead, he just stood there, staring through the glass at Liam, whose chest was finally rising steadily. In that moment, I realized something no matter what he'd done. His blood now ran in our son's veins, binding us forever in ways neither of us could escape. When Liam finally opened his eyes, the world seemed to stop. His small fingers twitched, his lips parted slightly, and I leaned closer, whispering his name like a prayer. "Mom?" he murmured weakly, and tears instantly filled my eyes. "I'm here, baby," I said, kissing his forehead. The relief was indescribable. After days of fear, pain, and helplessness, I could finally breathe. But then Liam's gaze shifted past me, toward the figure standing in the corner of the room. "Who's that?" he asked innocently, his voice barely above a whisper. My throat tightened. The man who had once broken me stood frozen, unsure of what to say. For a moment I wanted to lie, to protect Liam from the truth, but something inside me stopped. Maybe it was time. That's your father," I said quietly. The word felt heavy on my tongue, almost foreign. Liam blinked, processing, then turned his fragile face toward him. "My dad?" he repeated. The man nodded, his eyes glassy, his usual confidence gone. "Yeah, buddy," he said softly. "I'm your dad." There was an awkward silence, broken only by the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. Liam smiled faintly. "You came to help me?" he asked. His father swallowed hard, his voice unsteady. "I did, and I'm sorry I wasn't here before." That single sentence hung in the air, full of all the years he missed, the birthdays, the scraped knees, the nights of fever when I stayed awake alone. I watched him, torn between resentment and something dangerously close to forgiveness. Liam reached out a small hand toward him, and without hesitation, he took it. That sight broke me in ways I didn't expect. For the first time, I saw not the man who abandoned me, but the father who might finally be realizing what he'd lost. As Liam drifted back to sleep, I quietly left the room. He followed me into the corridor, his voice low. "Mia, I know I don't deserve to ask this, but can we talk?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to tell him to disappear again, to stay out of our lives. But deep down, I knew things weren't that simple anymore. Our son's heartbeat now carried both of us, and that meant the past couldn't be buried so easily. We sat in the dim hospital cafeteria, the hum of vending machines filling the silence between us. I wrapped my hands around a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago, while he stared at his untouched drink. For the first few minutes, neither of us spoke. There were too many words trapped in the air, too many years between them. Finally, he broke the silence. "I didn't know you kept the baby," he said quietly, his voice carrying a mix of regret and disbelief. I looked up, stunned. "You didn't know?" I repeated, almost laughing bitterly. "I called you. I left messages. I begged you to talk to me." He looked down, guilt flashing in his eyes. "My father. He intercepted everything. He told me you left town, that you didn't want anything to do with me." I froze, my anger battling confusion. "Your father?" He nodded slowly. "He said you were using me to climb up, that you lied about being pregnant." I was too stupid to question him. I packed my bags and left the country for a job he arranged. My chest tightened. For years I'd believed he had chosen to abandon us willingly. I had cursed his name, raised Liam on my own strength, fueled by anger and betrayal. And now, sitting across from me, he was telling me he'd been manipulated too. "You could have checked," I said, my voice shaking. "You could have come back." He nodded, pain flickering in his eyes. "I know, and I hate myself for not doing that. I saw your face every night wondering what if, but I thought you'd moved on, that maybe it was better for both of us." I looked away, tears blurring my vision. The truth didn't erase the years of loneliness or the struggle of raising a child alone. "You missed everything," I whispered. His first steps, his first word, his first day of school. He asked about his dad for years, and I didn't know what to tell him. He rubbed his face, sighing deeply. "I can't change the past, Mia, but if you'll let me, I want to be there now. For him, for you." I didn't respond. My heart wanted to believe him, but trust was something that couldn't be rebuilt overnight, not after so much had been lost. The days after Liam's recovery passed in a blur of mixed emotions. He was getting stronger, laughing again, asking endless questions about his new dad. Every time he said that word, something in me twisted. I wanted to protect him from disappointment, yet a small part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, his father meant what he'd said. He started visiting the hospital daily, bringing toys, reading bedtime stories, even sitting quietly through Liam's checkups. The nurses adored him, but I kept my distance, watching silently from the corner. One evening, as the sun painted golden streaks across the hospital windows, I found him asleep beside Liam's bed, his hand resting protectively on our son's arm. For a moment I saw the man I once loved gentle, patient, with that same quiet smile that used to melt my heart. But then reality crashed in. Love wasn't enough before. Why should it be now? When he woke up, he found me standing by the door. "You don't have to stay every night," I said softly. "He's doing much better." He looked at me, a small smile playing on his lips. "I know, but I want to. I owe him more than just blood, Mia." His words made my heart ache. "You can't make up for years with a few visits," I replied, maybe harsher than I intended. He nodded slowly. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life trying." I didn't know what to say. There was sincerity in his voice, something I hadn't heard in years. Still, the fear of being hurt again held me back. Later that night, as Liam slept peacefully, he turned to me and said quietly, "Do you ever think about what could have been? If things were different?" I met his gaze, and for a moment, time stopped. "I used to," I admitted. "But thinking about the past only reminds me how much it cost us." He sighed, eyes filled with unspoken regret. "Then maybe we can start over, not for us, but for him." His words lingered long after he left the room. I wanted to believe in second chances, but part of me couldn't forget the pain of the first one. And deep down, I feared life was about to test me again in ways I wasn't ready for. Just when I started to think peace was finally finding its way back into our lives, everything changed again. One morning, I walked into Liam's room and found a bouquet of white lilies on the table, along with a small envelope. The handwriting on it was elegant but unfamiliar. I frowned and opened it, my hands trembling slightly. Inside was a short message that made my blood run cold. You should be careful who you let back into your life, Mia. Some people never really change. My heart pounded. I looked around, half expecting someone to be watching. I rushed to the reception desk, asking who had come by, but the nurse said no one except Liam's father had visited that morning. Confusion turned to suspicion. Was this some cruel joke? That evening, when he arrived with his usual calm smile, I couldn't hide my unease. Did you send me a note? I asked abruptly. His brows furrowed. A note? What note? I handed it to him. As he read it, his jaw tightened, and a flash of anger crossed his face. I swear I didn't write this, he said. But I think I know who did. He looked away, shoulders tense. My father, I froze. Your father? The same man who lied to you about me? He nodded. He never approved of us. He said you were beneath me, that you'd ruin my life. When I left, I thought I was choosing freedom, but I was just letting him control me. If he found out I'm seeing you and Liam again, he'll do everything to stop it. My mind raced. Why would he care now? It's been years. He looked at me, pain flickering in his eyes. Because everything I own, everything I've built, is tied to him, and he doesn't want me to have anything he can't control, including my family. My stomach sank. The past wasn't done haunting us, it was clawing its way back. You need to stay away from us, I said, fear creeping into my voice. If he's capable of this, I won't risk Liam's safety. But he shook his head firmly. No, Mia, I won't let him hurt you or our son again. This time I'm staying, no matter what it costs me. The following days felt like living inside a storm that refused to pass. Every night, I double-checked the locks, jumped at every sound, and found myself glancing over my shoulder wherever I went. Liam, blissfully unaware of the chaos swirling around us, kept talking about how he wanted his dad to come home when he was discharged. I smiled for his sake, but inside I was drowning in worry. One evening, as I was gathering our things to take Liam home, I noticed a black car parked outside the hospital gates. It had been there 3 days in a row. The tinted windows made it impossible to see inside, but I could feel the weight of someone's gaze. My instincts screamed danger. I told him about it that night, and his face turned pale. That's my father's car, he said quietly. He's watching us. My blood ran cold. What does he want? He rubbed his temples. Control. He always wants control. I told him I was done letting him dictate my life, that I was taking responsibility for my son. He didn't take it well. The next morning, a lawyer showed up at the hospital with papers, legal threats, accusations, all signed by his father's company. They were trying to drag him into a lawsuit, claiming financial misconduct, threatening to destroy everything he had built if he didn't cut ties with me and Liam. I watched him crumble in front of me, his confidence fading as he realized how far his father was willing to go. He can't do this, I said, my voice shaking. He can and he will, he replied, eyes filled with quiet fury. But I'm not backing down this time. For the first time, I saw the strength in him I'd once fallen in love with, not arrogance, not pride, but genuine courage. I left you once because I was afraid, he said, turning to me. I won't make that mistake again. I'd rather lose everything than walk away from you and our son. Tears welled in my eyes. But before I could answer, Liam's monitor beeped from the other room, pulling us both back to reality. The storm wasn't over yet, but now, at least, we were facing it together. The next week was a blur of tension and defiance. He spent his days meeting lawyers, trying to protect his company, and his nights sitting beside Liam, pretending everything was fine. But I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the quiet fear that his father might destroy him completely. One night I found him outside the hospital, standing under the cold glow of a streetlight, staring at his phone. His knuckles were white as he gripped it. "He called again," he said when I approached. "He gave me an ultimatum. Either I sign over control of my assets to him and leave you both, or he'll make sure I lose everything." My heart clenched. "What are you going to do?" He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw real peace in his expression. "I'm choosing you. All of this money, power, it means nothing if I can't look my son in the eyes and tell him I did the right thing." I wanted to tell him how proud I was, how much those words meant, but before I could, headlights flashed across the parking lot. A black car pulled up fast, stopping just feet away from us. The driver's window rolled down, and there he was, his father. An older version of him, colder, crueler, eyes full of contempt. "Get in the car, son," he barked. "This is your last chance to stop ruining your life." He straightened, his jaw set. "My life stopped belonging to you the day you made me walk away from them." The older man's face twisted with rage. "You're throwing away everything I built for you, for a woman who trapped you and a child who shouldn't exist?" I stepped forward, trembling but defiant. "That child saved your son's life. The blood that runs in Liam's veins is his. Maybe it's time you remembered what family really means." The silence that followed was thick and suffocating. The older man glared at me, then at his son, before slamming the car into gear and speeding off into the night. For a long time we stood there in the cold, both shaken but strangely relieved. He turned to me, voice barely above a whisper. "It's over," he said. But deep down I wasn't sure it was. Some storms don't end in thunder, they fade quietly, leaving scars that never really heal. Weeks passed, and for the first time in years, life began to feel normal again. Liam was finally home, his laughter filling the house like sunlight after a long storm. I'd find him sitting on the couch beside his father, both of them building toy airplanes or drawing superheroes together. Every time I saw them like that, something inside me softened, healing parts of me I didn't know were still broken. His father kept his promise, he stayed. He cut ties with his father completely, walking away from the company and the wealth that once defined him. It wasn't easy. There were nights when we worried about bills, when the future looked uncertain. But strangely, we were happier than we'd ever been. One evening, as I watched Liam sleep, he came up behind me, wrapping his arms gently around my shoulders. "You saved both of us," he whispered. I turned to face him, tears in my eyes. "No," I said softly. "Liam saved us. He gave us a reason to try again." He smiled, the kind of smile that held both apology and hope. "Do you think we can really start over?" he asked. I looked at him, the man who once shattered my heart but now stood beside me, humbled, changed, and ready to rebuild. "Starting over doesn't mean forgetting the past," I said. "It means choosing to move forward anyway." For the first time, I meant it. The pain, the betrayal, the fear, they had all shaped me into someone stronger, someone who could forgive. Not because the past didn't hurt anymore, but because holding on to it would only chain me to the worst parts of my life. As dawn began to rise, painting the sky in gold, I realized something profound. Sometimes, life brings people back not to repeat old wounds, but to show how much we've grown since then. Liam stirred in his sleep, mumbling softly. "Mom, Dad." The word hung in the air like a blessing. He looked at me, eyes glistening. "He called me Dad," he whispered. I nodded, smiling through my tears. "Because you finally are." In that quiet moment, I knew the past had lost its power over us. What once began with betrayal had found its way to forgiveness, and that more than anything was our miracle.